The media tends to focus on international crises that tend to be quick and visual, usually literally explosive, terror attacks and things of that sort. Those are the events that will get coverage. But there are tragedies brewing around the globe right now that aren't as sexy and aren't as visual, but they will actually be life and death issues for literally millions of people. And one example of that is the growing droughts in multiple regions of different parts of Africa. Now, to put it in historical context, during the drought that devastated the Horn of Africa in 2010 and 2011, 260,000 people starved to death. So that was back in 2010 and 2011. In the intervening years, we had a particularly harsh El Nino event in that region. Basically flips the weather, and that can cause significant droughts. And so we are seeing that in the Horn of Africa and in other parts of Africa as well. According to a representative of Oxfam, the vegetation cover index in parts of the Horn of Africa area is lower now than it was at this stage in the 2010 and 2011 drought. That indicator is looking worse now than it was then. With drought, it's a slow onset crisis, it doesn't attract media coverage, and very unpleasant pictures of people and animals in a very bad way come only once it's way too late. A representative of the IDS, an organization in the UK, says, as we enter 2017, over 37 million people across Africa are without food. Families face losing their homes and livelihoods as the effects of widespread drought worsen. And to give you an idea of it's not just in the Horn of Africa, but it's spread. We have a couple of other countries' examples as well. The situation in southern Madagascar is particularly worrying as maize, cassava, and rice productions fell by as much as 95% this year compared to 2015. An estimated over 800,000 people on the island are in the emergency or crisis categories of food insecurity. In Malawi, the drought is widely considered the worst humanitarian crisis in the country's history, with more than a third of its population in immediate need of food assistance. Now, we have some statistics on money that is being raised by the UN and other organizations, but I want to turn it over to the panel because this is exactly the sort of situation that very often we only hear about because an Oscar-winning movie is made about it years later, or maybe there's an editorial. And other than that, it's not exciting, and so people don't generally cover it, even though the numbers are staggering, the number of people affected or, in some cases, killed.
So 37 million people affected is a giant number. It's so large, it's hard to wrap your mind around it. So I want to give you some context. So now that's for 2017, and we see the drought coming. Again, you can doubt the scientists, but they're usually right, and so there are facts in the world, and that's likely to happen. But we already know what happened in 2011. So then in that 2010-2011 period when we had the last disastrous drought, as John pointed out, 260,000 people not were affected, died. So now, I had Jen, our producer, look up how many people died from terrorist attacks in the U.S. and across the world in that same year. So 2010, 4 fatalities in the U.S., 2011, 0. Now, U.S. fatalities worldwide, because Americans are abroad as well, 6 people died in 2010, 2011, 3 people died. So 9 people died from terrorist attacks, and if you're in their family, you're affected by that, it's unbelievably tragic. We're not minimizing those deaths. 9, 260,000. Okay, hold on. You say, okay, well, but this worldwide. And the worldwide number is big due to terror attacks because the Middle East is an absolute mess. You've got Iraq, etc. And certainly in 2010, 2011, it was a mess as well. So, no, actually, let me give you the 2015 numbers here, the latest numbers that we have. So that includes Syria. So 2015 was terrible for terror attacks across the world. Deaths were 28,328 versus 260,000, almost 10 times as many people dying from drought.
In just the Horn of Africa, by the way.
Yeah, so it's not to say that we shouldn't concern ourselves with terrorism. Of course we should, right? And you say, well, maybe there's something we could do about terrorism, although it seems like we haven't really solved it. It's been decades, and all we do is bombing, and we get worse attacks, not better attacks. And you could think, oh, there's nothing we could do about droughts. That's not remotely true. Maybe there's nothing you could do about the immediate drought that's coming as part of nature. And I'm not even talking about climate change, which is the long-term fix to stop climate change. And it's not like there wouldn't be any droughts if there wasn't climate change. We know there was droughts in Africa before, right? Now it looks like it's getting worse. But I'm just talking about, can we just help these folks a little bit? right? Because there is something we could do to help. And it doesn't take as much money as you think to save tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of lives, especially for the kids, because they die from malnutrition, they die from dehydration, they die from diarrhea, and simple preventable things that if
Or
we got
survive
them,
and are affected for the rest of their life in a negative way.
that's right. So if we got them medical care, if we got them a little bit of food, and so the UN gets demonized all the time. There's some few political votes there, but really what they do a lot is UNICEF goes in there and tries to save all these lives. Even if you don't like other parts of the UN for whatever political reasons, right? For God's sake, help them to help these people. We can do this together and save an unbelievable amount of lives.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to add something regarding the climate change component to all of this. So we do know that drought is cyclical in certain regions of the world, and it's going to happen regardless of human behavior and climate change. However, we also know that climate change exacerbates the problem. So in Southern California, for instance, while climate change was not the leading factor in why the drought is occurring, it's exacerbating the problem. The drought lasts a lot longer. And so if we're having conversations about terrorism and the issue of national security, what you need to keep in mind that the biggest threat to national security is climate change. Because as extreme weather conditions worsen throughout the world and famine becomes an increasing problem worldwide, well, what do you think people are going to do? They're going to go to war for limited resources.
Yeah.
And so that's something that all of us need to keep in mind. It's not just about coal jobs. It's not just about, fracking and things like that. Renewable energy actually protects national security.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm glad that you pointed that out because we've been talking about, obviously, while many in the government haven't gotten that climate change is a serious threat long term, the military has been planning for it. We've talked about that before. And one of the things that we've heard about is that you're going to see more and more civil wars or wars between nations in regions like in Africa and Asia that are in effect water wars. They're going to be fighting over the limited water sources that remain. And they might not be identified as such. You might not know that the impetus for these wars is years and years of drought and more difficulty being able to do the agriculture you need to feed your people, but that will actually be why it's happening. And we saw recently Donald Trump was attacking the UN, saying, what has it ever done for anyone? Well, as Cenk points out, it does do humanitarian work around the world. In this particular case, as of early December, some $757 million has been raised for Regional Interagency Standing Committee comprising UN and non-governmental humanitarian agencies in the region. So it is not purely the UN, but it is the UN coordinating with other organizations. But despite those efforts, funding gaps amounting to $550 million are yet to be met. And that is not the money required to nullify the negative impacts of these droughts, both in South Africa and in the Horn of Africa. That's the money that they would like to have available to help people, to test them for malnutrition, to treat those sorts of diseases and things of that sort. And they're having difficulty coming up with even that much money.
I think we can work together. So the conservatives who say, no, the United Nations, we shouldn't fund them. Well, if you don't fund them, a lot of those kids in Africa are going to die. And so that's a reality. And if you're comfortable with that reality, okay. My idea is, if there are parts of the UN you don't like, okay, well, you know what? You look to fix it. Now, I probably have a different view than a lot of you out there. Some of you agree with me, some of you don't. That's perfectly normal about some of the votes in the UN. Obviously, the Israeli-Palestinian vote came up recently, although almost the entire world agrees, but some in America and Israel don't. Okay. Then for God's sake, say, all right, I'm going to try to fix that because I don't agree with that decision. But meanwhile, UNICEF and all the organizations that are looking to help these kids and these people in Africa, we can do that together. And if we're separated, it's nearly impossible to do. But if we're united, we can accomplish those things. And is there anyone against saving these lives? I know some people think, it's Africa, it's far away from me. It's not me. It's not my village. It's not my community. Don't be that person. You know that that's not... No conservative or liberal or independent thinks that's a good guy. Oh, the one who says, I don't care, it's not my problem. No one looks at that guy and goes, hey, that guy's a really good guy. That's a good Christian right there. Or a good anything, right?
Yeah.
So let's figure out a way to focus on the real problems in the world. And finally, isn't it interesting that what the media chooses to focus on? So if it's like a terrorist attack, or there's other things that are like touch points for them. In fact, on the UN issue, the Israeli-Palestinian vote was very, very important, don't get me wrong. But ton of media attention, right? United Nations saving hundreds of thousands of lives if we work together, and we are to some degree, as John explained, we could do more. Hardly a peep.
Yeah.
So you don't hear about the good work that the humanitarian missions are doing, and you don't hear about this tremendous problem where hundreds of thousands of preventable deaths are imminent.
Yeah.
But we talk about 1 or 2 deaths. We talk about 20 deaths. But there's 260,000 deaths that are right there. And the media's like, I don't care.
And look, if you're a little bit uncomfortable with comparing it to terrorism, if it's an earthquake or a tsunami or something like that, we'll generally cover those sorts of things because they're quantifiable. You can take a picture of it. It happens in an afternoon or a weekend or over the course of a week. But when it's a slow thing, it's that literal frog in the boiling pot of water. Humans are just not well equipped to notice changes over time, even if they have drastic consequences.
Well, we just told you, so now you know it's happening,
Yeah.
and let's hope that we can unite to do something about it. If you want to see this happen, donate $3, $20, $27, whatever you can afford. You know that if everybody that's watching this video donated right now, we could stop the fundraising because we'd have enough. So go to tytnetwork.com/go. We'll wait while you make the donation. Thank you for doing it and for building a great new journalism team. And thanks for watching.